Welcome to Customer Service Academy Radio with author and customer experience expert Tony Johnson. Tony will share his vision for successful customer service, leadership, and business excellence, and speak to some of the most impactful leaders in business today. And now, here's Tony Johnson.
Hello, everybody. Customer Service Academy is on the air. I'm Tony Johnson, your customer experience speaker, consultant, and trainer. And today's episode is coming to you courtesy of Ignite Your Service Training and Consulting and 4XI Global Consulting and Solutions. Truly better together. Folks, we have an amazing show for you today. We are welcoming Chase Oliver onto the show. Chase Oliver has been dubbed the most influential libertarian in America by Rolling Stone magazine and is the Libertarian Party presidential nominee. We were thrilled to have this interview with him today, and it is brought to you in its entirety, unedited, and here it is. Welcome to Customer Service Academy, sir. It is an honor to have you here today.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to speaking with you and to those who are listening.
Amazing. So we're going to focus our conversation today around government customer service. Believe it or not, it's really a thing, folks, and really excited to have Mr. Oliver here to talk about this today. Where do you see, as a candidate, the greatest opportunity to improve the way that government serves the people, particularly in these everyday kind of services where government meets people?
Well, what I want to see is, as a libertarian, overall, our philosophy is limiting the size and scope of government. But for what we want to have remained, we want it to be extremely transparent and efficient and streamlined. And so I think at the bottom line, when a lot of these people are contacting folks who are within the government bureaucracy, I may want to see a reduced size of a government bureaucracy, but I certainly want to see those who are having to have direct interaction with government to be having clear information, concise information, and being able to streamline the processes that people have to go through so there's less need for red tape and ultimately less of a need for us to be having to be contacted directly because something's so complicated or time consuming. We want to streamline processes as much as possible up and down the federal government.
And that word transparency, people toss that around a lot, and I was happy to hear you bring it into this because sometimes things feel like a lot happens behind the scenes, right? Is transparency an important part of this overall making people feel more sure that their government's given them the service that they deserve as a citizen?
Yeah, absolutely. Transparency is important, not just for making sure that people are doing their job, but making sure that people are doing their job in a way that's efficient and wise. So that way, every taxpayer dollar, which, again, as a libertarian, I want to see less and less taxes having to be paid, but I want every tax dollar to be treated as precious and to be treated as something that has to be valued and used in the most efficient way possible. And right now, that's just not the case in far too many areas of government. And much of that has to do with the lack of transparency. People don't know exactly where their money is going or what it's being used for. And so if we can open up the eyes of the public and let it be seen exactly what their dollars are being spent on, they also might change their priority and say, hey, maybe we want government to focus on this instead of that. And so that's another important key factor is that increased transparency gives the voter that vision for where they want our country to go.
That's a fantastic point of view. It feels very, very like retail to me. I spent a lot of years in retail before I opened up my consultancy and my speaking business. And that feels very much like what any customer wants, right? Is value for their dollar.
Well, fun fact, I worked in the customer service space, both in the restaurant industry where I worked every job from being a dishwasher all the way up to being a general manager. And of course, face-to-face as a server and a lot of those roles. And so I know exactly what it means, like serving a customer, facing them face to face. But also I worked in the maritime logistics industry for 6 years where, I was helping to facilitate customer moves of their containers from one part of the world to the other. And you have to make sure you're being as straightforward and clear and concise with your customer as possible so they know exactly what process their cargo is going through, when it's going to be expected to be there, and basically kind of calm the nerves of those folks who are waiting for that container to get there, right? And so I know the spirit of being in customer service because I worked in it. And that was I think it prepared me really well for politics because let me tell you, if you're a server, I've had more anger thrown at me over lack of bringing ranch to the table than many of the political arguments I've been in. And so it kind of toughens you up and gets you ready for that kind of a thing.
I always thought that if more folks did time as a server in their youth, they'd be much nicer to people in general in the world.
Absolutely. And, shout out to all those great service employees who allow me to do what I'm doing, traveling across the country. Those people who are serving at restaurants, who are working in hospitality at hotels, who are working through the airline industry, who help me get from place to place, right? Even down to the Uber driver. Each of those people provides a valuable service. And I think more people need to respect the power of service industry work and exactly how much it does to help make the world go round. And you're right. Restaurant workers, retail workers, some of these people are some of the least respected workers out there, but they're the workers who do some of the toughest work that the average person, if they had to put their, if they had to put their feet in a pair of my slip-ons when I used to work in the restaurant industry, or no slip shoes rather, then maybe their view would be a little bit different.
Well, it's so funny. I have a restaurant background as well. Started in the district at Ball State University, and I will tell you, we have a lot of folks in the service industry, retail, restaurants, hotels, who actually listen to the show. So you really are speaking right to the choir right now, as they say.
Oh, we love it. So shout out to all of them. Thank you for the work you do.
So many Americans do feel frustrated with these long wait times and the red tape. You actually mentioned red tape earlier in accessing services and understanding what's available to them. Are there any specific steps you can think of that would simplify processes and reduce wait times for folks who are trying to just understand what's available to them and just trying to get the services they want from their government? And I understand you've got that point of view, right? A little less government's not necessarily a bad thing, but when they do need to get it, any thoughts you have about how things can just be simplified and streamlined?
Oh, well, there's two areas where I can give you, an example. One is my approach to the VA. I absolutely want to streamline the process of the Veterans Administration. These are people who have served our country, and part of that contract is that we honor to serve them when they return with health care and with the benefits they need through the VA. And one of the things I want to streamline is actually the amount of red tape and bureaucracy around receiving healthcare outside of the traditional VA model, the VA hospitals, which service members can do today, but they do it by having to fill out a whole bunch of complex paperwork. And oftentimes, private medical clinics don't have the full VA healthcare information that comes from the VA. So we can streamline both those processes by removing all that red tape and regulation and just basically allowing for a VA ID card that allows you to go into any traditional healthcare healthcare office, for a doctor's office or anything like that, and allow you to very quickly have your process paperwork, because it's all of your information is right there, ready to be plugged into the paperwork. We could do that, and that would save a lot of manpower and a lot of time, both at the VA and for the veterans. That could streamline this process and provide better healthcare. So that's just one example that we could of a program we could do that would save time, money, and provide better outcome of services. And there's a lot of areas of government that are just kind of really, really antiquated. Like if you look at some of the regulations and some of the ways in state governments things are written out, and how antiquated some of the technology has to be, even down to like, I'll give you a fun example. I'm running for president, right? And I'm on the ballot in every county in Michigan. Well, every county in Michigan has to then send me a paper ballot that shows that my name is spelled correctly. And so why am I getting a piece of paper from every county in Michigan? I'm a statewide candidate. Can't we just streamline the process to where you're getting one form instead of 50 or whatever it was? So there's little things like that you just notice all along this process, and just how the FEC works and how elections work. And there are governmental agencies all across the spectrum that have this kind of antiquated legalese written into the way they do things, and it leaves them stuck with antiquated technology or methods that just aren't valuable. And a lot of that is traditional paper when we need to be moving to online platforms.
Well, I'll tell you, my doctors could learn something from that, because I fill out everything online and then I show up and they hand me a clipboard with a piece of paper on it and I fill everything out again. So I can really empathize with that.
Yeah, I think we need to, and you know what? If we could lead the way in that kind of efficiency at the VA, I think we would see a lot more of it from the health insurance marketplace as well. But yeah, that's an efficiency that I've always, yes, we need to see that just in a regular doctor's office. But I think the VA could facilitate creating some sort of system to where our medical information for veterans could be very easily passed from doctor's office to doctor's office. And who knows, maybe that could be the way we do it in the future, and we're not handed that clipboard next time.
Well, I would love it if that were the case. Training and staffing are so crucial to just customer service in general. You probably know that, from your time at the Maritime and in your restaurant and background in business. Would you support initiatives to improve the overall training and staffing that government service roles get within agencies? Because, if you walk into some government agencies, it's sort of hit or miss on how good or not good the service is behind the counter. Would you be behind some kind of basically behavioral skills training to help folks just give better service if they were meeting folks live?
I think certainly. So the two things that we could do for that is improve our training models that allow us to have better staff to begin with. If you look at the IRS, for instance, a study came out a few years ago where somebody called the IRS with the same tax problem over and over again, and they were given different information, different solutions nearly every time they called because of how complicated the tax system is, of course, but also just because they weren't very well trained in to identify that problem or be specializing in that area of tax law. And so we definitely need to, certainly as we uncomplicate the tax code as much as possible, still be making sure we're training individuals, say, who are assisting people with that with much better information. But that's across the board. Those are just those kind of inefficiencies. That's the first one I can just identify right off the top of my head. So we want to create better training systems, but also when we reduce the overall size of the government bureaucracy, it's going to lead us to keep retaining the best of the best, providing those services. So as you reduce the size of the state and the size of the federal workforce, you're going to want to retain the best employees that you have, and also have some measure of being able to see KPIs. A lot of the times, I think government workers kind of get stuck in that job, and they're never really kind of challenged to do better, which is one of the reasons why I think a lot of the services that government provides today could be better done through the private marketplace, even if it's in partnership with the government, because I think that will produce better efficiency overall. So a lot of these customer service roles, you could actually use a private-public partnership to get the best workers possible in each field.
And some of those public partnerships and private partnerships, some of those organizations that we're partnered with may have outstanding service models. They could come in and partner with government to bring in those really great customer service pieces, right? I'm not saying Disney would be someone you'd partner with, but could you imagine partnering with organizations like that that have that sort of hospitality rich culture and the way you could sort of infuse that as well as expertise?
Hey, I wouldn't even be opposed to that. That's a great kind of way that people, Disney would be a great example of a service that provides excellent customer service, and that's because they are definitely profit driven, but there are certain methods that they have used that could be exported into the public model that could allow us for increased use of services. If not for another reason, just look at the way they handle logistics. They have found solutions to a lot of logistical issues just by kind of expanding their way of thinking outside the traditional model. And so sometimes bringing in those private private firms that can maybe have that kind of outside of the traditional box thinking can bring something in to what, frankly, government a lot of times is that very square, very by the book, regimented kind of a thing. Well, bringing in those new ways of thinking might be able to create more efficiency. So Disney's an excellent example of that.
So, how do you stay connected with your constituents? I know that you're probably deeply connected with them through the process, but how do you stay connected and grounded with them to understand what they're looking for and maybe what good service from a government would be, to them, and just in general, keeping your finger on the pulse of what your constituency's saying?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, there's the retail politics feedback that you get. When you talk to people one-on-one, you hear what's important to them very quickly. But a way we've been staying connected with a lot of voters that, I can't talk to every single person, is through both our email channels and our social media channels. So we're observing exactly what's important to the voters. And of course, when voters direct message us or send us an email, we're taking a look at exactly like the volume of what issues are mattering the most to voters, what we need to stress. If I say something that causes a bit of a ruckus, like, hey, this caused a bit of a stir amongst our constituency because we're getting emails about it, things like that. I find that to be incredibly important. But really, it also involves looking at public polling, looking at what is mattering to the average voter each day so that we, as a candidate, I can craft my message to speak to what's important to voters. I'm a big immigration rights activist, and immigration happens to be a huge issue in this election. But let's say it wasn't. Let's say only 2% of voters cared about immigration, but 90% cared about, I don't know, 90% cared about car insurance regulations. I don't know why I just pulled that out of my hat. But if that's the way it were, well, I better be drafting my message as a candidate for president a heck of a lot more about car insurance than I am about immigration. That doesn't happen to be the case. Many more people care about immigration than car insurance rates. But you see my point. If we can get
Right.
that initial feedback, we can provide the solutions that are most speaking to the most voters. And so we've tried to do that through social media, through our email, and even our phone number. I have a campaign phone number. People leave voicemails on it all the time, of every variety. And some of those are certainly unique, but by and large, you get great feedback that way.
Well, I can tell you that's how I actually was able to connect with you. I actually sent a note in through your campaign website to info at and got a nice reply back, went back and forth with one of your media folks and helped me book this time with you. So I can tell you folks, he's 100% right. They are listening when you send stuff into the website.
Yeah, and speaking to my team in customer service, they are fantastic. I can't speak highly enough of my campaign team, my staff and volunteers. They try to do their best to make this campaign look its best, and I certainly wouldn't be nowhere, nowhere without them. Right? Like they are certainly a part of this team, even if my name's in the tin. And that's the same for every company out there. For every CEO out there, remember your customer service workers are the people who really help connect you with your constituents, and in your case, it's customers. And so for me, I'm just so thankful that I have a staff and volunteers who are so receptive and so able to get me on programs like this and are so quick to respond.
So when you think about the service for for the constituents, you think about service in government, what does success ultimately look like? If you were looking back and you said, you know what, we really did something. This is what we did, and it looks good, feels good right now. How will you measure success to improve service in government?
Well, I think the KPIs I would look at is quality of, the quality of support that people are saying, or do they approve or disapprove of these services? Can we improve the positive ranking that we have and the way people interact with government? And then secondly, the efficiency factor. How much more can we get out of a dollar than what's currently being done? Like, where can we find the areas to improve services, but also improve efficiency so more services can be provided? Like, I think those are the two areas that if we look at the end of the day, if I were elected president, and I could say, hey, I improved the KPIs there, I think that would be ultimately a very successful term, because we have been more responsive to people using less of their tax money.
That's a fantastic piece. And this has been absolutely great. One last question before we get off here, just to help folks get to know you a little bit better, just as a person, because I'm a big believer in getting to know people as people. Being in the restaurant business, having come from that space, just out of curiosity, when you're having that day, when you really need to kind of have that comfort piece, what's a favorite kind of food item that you go to? Is there something that really speaks to you from a food standpoint?
Oh, I'll tell you, when it comes to, because I'm traveling a lot of the time, and I admire consistency in good food, and so especially when I'm traveling around the South, there is nothing that beats Waffle House. I'll tell you right now, if you've had a long day and you just need some good food that you know consistently is going to be good, that's going to serve to you fast, and that's going to hit the spot, that is my go-to. That's my go-to restaurant. And then when I'm on the road, I'm all about uh, goldfish crackers, sour cream and onion potato chips, and gummy bears. Those are like my three comfort foods as I'm traveling. But if I'm sitting down in a restaurant, it's hash browns, scattered, smothered, and covered, baby.
I love it. They live up to their name too, because my wife is a huge fan of the pecan waffles you can get there. They do a,
Yes.
a really great job. And I was actually just watching the comedian John Oliver talk about the Waffle House Index, about how during a hurricane you can tell how bad it's going to be by if the Waffle Houses are open or closed. So I always get a kick out of that.
Oh yeah. Well, if you want a program that tells you about the magnificence of Waffle House that also respects service industry workers, watch Anthony Bourdain go to a Waffle House back in the day. He said it was better than French Laundry, which is like one of the fanciest restaurants out there. So mad props to the Waffle House. Thank you guys for being great service along the road. If anybody who is from Waffle House happens to be listening to this, y'all do a wonderful job, and you're not thanked enough for it.
I've seen that episode. You're right. It's amazing. Well, Mr. Oliver, this has been fantastic. How can people get in touch? What is it you'd love folks to know? What, in closing, would you like to say to the audience as we come to the finish line here? What would you like to share with our listeners?
Well, in closing, for those of you who are in the customer service industry, whether it's in government or outside of government, I understand the work you do because I worked in customer service. I know what it means to be somebody who works that 40 hours plus a week and is still struggling to put food on the table, because I felt that pinch of inflation. And if you think we need more of that mindset, in our government, in those who are actually in charge of things. I encourage you to support the customer service worker who's running for president. That would be me, to let your voice be heard that we need a change in priorities. And so I urge you to go to votechaseoliver.com, check out my platform, check out where I stand, compare me to the other candidates, and just vote for who you think is the best. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I wager that many people will think that's me if they take an honest look. But either way, get out and vote, get out and let your voice be heard. And thank you for the service that anybody who's listening to this provides and whatever it is they do. And let's just keep trying to be of service to each other. I think that's the way we'll have a better humanity, is if we work in service of one another, whether it's in government, outside of government, or just helping out a neighbor who needs a cup of sugar. So just try to be more mindful. And that's what I try to do in government. Thank you for the time. And I hope to earn some votes.
So that was our interview with Chase Oliver, the Libertarian candidate for president. We were thrilled to have him on the show today. And again, we extended that exact same offer to all of the other presidential candidates as well. At the time of this recording, we are still waiting to hear back from the other camps, but we certainly hope that we do, and they are more than welcome to come on the show anytime. So remember, we are still in the middle of the Great Service Comeback. Mr. Oliver talked about some amazing things that really, although they were kind of toward the lens of government, they work everywhere, folks. These pieces around transparency, these pieces around streamlining, these pieces around helping understand what's available and making things easy, all applicable in all lines of business. So if you want to bring a bit of customer experience learning to your organization, head on over to igniteyourservice.com/learning to check out our virtual programs for your business. And until next time, I've been Tony Johnson, your customer experience strategist and trainer, reminding you to keep your customers and your constituents, if you're a political candidate, at the center of everything you do, because that's where the most amazing things are possible. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week.
This has been Customer Service Academy Radio with Tony Johnson. Tony is available to speak at your event, meeting, or workshop. Have a powerful customer-focused day.